Now we're ready to sum up what faith can mean to us in our lives. Well, faith, obviously, that makes us alive to the workings of God, salvation history, is far more than just knowing some truths, knowing the answer to the catechism questions. Let's look at some of the insights we can get from the scriptures. If you remember the gospel story, Jesus many times spoke of faith. He praised the faith of those people whom he cures many times. What is that faith? It's not answering catechism questions. It's an openness to the coming of God. In Jesus, those around him saw the coming of God, the merciful, healing, life-giving God, the God who brings hope and confidence to people in their struggle. Cardinal Walter Casper sums this up very beautifully, the meaning of faith for Jesus. He said, faith is openness to something to come, something new. He goes on to say, faith is sharing in the omnipotence of God, the great saving power and wonder of God's working. We can share in that. And faith is an openness. Faith is existing as human beings in openness and receptivity. Openness to what God is doing. So there's a wonderful thought to bear in mind as we think about what faith should mean to us and the faith we hand on to those whom we teach, whom we guide. Lucien Cerfo is one of the great interpreters of St. Paul. And Paul, of course, was a great interpreter of the whole work of Christ's saving action in the Paschal mystery. Lucien Cerfo says, summing up what Paul's view was, an action of God's omnipotence is available to us. In other words, God's acting, and he wants us to benefit from his action. And faith is the attitude that really makes it possible for us to share in all that he's giving by his omnipotent action in our midst. You can see how this is very close to what O'Leary is talking about. Openness. God, the Creator, is with us always. He's at work in our lives all the time. And if we're open to that, his presence, we'll recognise in the ebb and flow of our lives, the ups and downs, the joys, the sadnesses, the challenges, we'll recognise his invitation, his accompanying presence to us in our lives. We can see clearly, as I've said, that faith is far more than just having right answers about questions of doctrine. Faith is something that enriches our whole human life. The Constitution on the Church in the modern world that I've quoted has this challenge statement to make. It is one of the principal challenges and problems of the Church is the split between people's faith and their daily lives. In other words, the Council is calling us to make that link, put our lives in salvation history, situate ourselves in the great ongoing plan of God, and understand what all that means. Thomas Groome, who is a great teacher in the field of catechetics, he sums up the lessons we've been looking at in this ways. He said there are three dimensions to faith. First of all, faith is certainly access to knowledge we would never have had if God had not revealed it. But notice, and here we turn back to biblical insights. Knowing, for the Bible, is far more than something of the head. Knowing involves also the heart. To know is to know at that deep level. In the scriptures, sexual union is called knowing. Well, here we're coming back to our spousal theme. The knowing we share in, as members of the church, Christ's spouse and bride, is that most intimate knowing of union of hearts that we have with the Saviour. So we come to know what we know the Saviour. We know what was dear to him. We know what he came to tell us about our Father in heaven. All these great truths and encouraging truths, the total plan of God, the almighty triumph of creation that will come at the end. These are things we know through faith. So that knowledge is far more than just heady knowledge. It's a knowledge that really touches the heart. And therefore, because it touches the heart, Groom said, it has a trusting dimension. See, many Protestants stress the trusting nature of faith, and it's a very valid insight. We've got to recover that ourselves. Do our people have that trusting faith? Knowing God, knowing the Saviour, knowing the truth that he brings, should fill us with trust, with awe, with wonder, with gratitude, with the certainty that God is for us. What can anything do against us when God is for us? That trusting dimension of faith. And having found that trusting union with Christ and all he stands for, faith gives expression to itself in loving service. A faith that is not leading us to loving service of those around us, of the world in general, sharing with Christ his responsibility for the world, is not a living faith. A faith that should shape our whole Christian life. Let me conclude by coming back to salvation history. I've been stressing salvation history, and the great plan of the scriptures is about the ongoing drama of what God's doing in creation. But notice salvation history is not only a magnificent universal thing, it's a very personal thing. There's a salvation history in the life of each one of us. And as our life unfolds, as we come to know our life, as faith shows us the meaning of our life, as our life unfolds, we'll come to know how God has been with us in the progress of our lives. That we'll come to know the lessons he taught us. We'll come to know the hope that should be ours as Christians who believe in the one true God. I'd recommend, for those who've been following this presentation, that you go on to our Emmaus series DVD, Stages of Faith Experience, which help to bring it down to the ordinary grassroots level of our faith experience and how that experience goes through various stages.